Welcome back to God. My brain's done.
Guff Stuff Podcast.
Yes. Damn.
I'm Javan.
I'm Guff. Wow, my brain just shut the hell right off.
Great way to start the episode.
Yeah.
What are we doing today?
So what? Oh, well, we're going to talk about you. Amazingly enough, we're going to talk about some of the stuff you're doing because it's not technically what we're normally talking about, but it is something that is definitely related to everything we do. Believe it or not, your little side project thing you're working on is, I don't even know if it's a side project at this point. It might be your full project, and we're just a side project, which is perfect. I love it.
This is so many layers deep.
I know.
What's going on here?
You're recording of sounds and making music out of it.
Oh, yeah.
This it's a hobby
I guess it
to
fits
some
in the
people,
hobby space.
but
yeah.
we use it for. You might even hear some of these sounds on this podcast at some point. Maybe in a YouTube video, maybe in a game coming up at some point.
Okay.
But
yeah.
like, I find it really interesting, and I know you've done music in the past, and I've actually used it in some of my intros.
Yep.
When I had my YouTube called L.A.G.S at the time, I switched it because it wasn't going the direction I wanted to, and I wanted to use L.A.G.S literally just for movie type making, even whether it was shorts, not necessarily YouTube videos, but movie storytelling videos.
Oh,
That's what
gotcha.
L.A.G.S was for. And I just went off the rail back in the day, but you made an intro for that for me. Well, I just took what were your songs and made an intro for it because you gave me permission. But I like where it's going. I like what you're doing with it, and I just kind of want to talk about it in the process of, because I think it's something that's interesting that people can add to even their role playing games. You know, because we talked last week about Sirenscape.
Yeah.
Right. This is stuff that it just gets people in.
Yeah. It's really funny, too, because one of the Magic players the other day was like, hey, man, I know you do music. Would you help me do this thing? And I'm like, well, here's how you can get started with it really easily.
Right.
So maybe I'll just talk about that a little bit, like music as a hobby.
Yeah, I think we should talk about music as a hobby and just the different things that go along with it.
Well, first off, I'd like to start by saying, like, music is one of these things where it feels like there's a massive barrier to entry, where like you need to play an instrument and you need to learn in a formal setting and you need to do all these things to quote unquote do music.
Right. That's
a crock of shit.
Yeah.
like there's been some very successful musicians. I think of a guy, there's a Jamaican guitarist called Bushy One String.
Okay, Bushy One String.
And he literally plays an acoustic guitar that has one string on it.
Right. Okay.
And he just does music, and he's fairly successful, to be honest. And then there's the idea of like working in the electronic music space, using a computer to make music.
Right.
You don't even really need, honestly, any sort of musical skill. It's just pressing buttons and doing a beat in time and it's finding the right software, the right tools for the job.
Okay.
We talk a lot about the right tool for the right job on this podcast.
Yeah, we do. Right.
In fact, if there was any mantra of this podcast, it's the right tool for the right job, and communication is key.
If nothing, by episode 200, we're literally going to have, it's going to be hey, guess what, guys? What we have learned in 200 episodes, the right tool for the right job matters.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess like musically speaking, I just want to like demystify it a little bit.
Yep.
There's this idea of like you need to know all the chords, the notes, the theory, all of this to be successful.
Right.
And it's just not true. It's not. Because at the end of the day, we're in the hobby space, right?
Right.
Like, and honestly, this kind of like bleeds into like D&D for DMing and stuff too. A lot of people like, I've heard this excuse so many times of like, I don't want to play D&D because I don't know anything about it.
Right.
Well, that's why you play it, right?
Dude, yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard that before.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you try to convince like a family member, they're like, I don't know anything about it. I don't want to do it. And you're like, but that's not the point. It's to try something new.
I know, I just going to go a little off topic, but just something I feel I should say. that subject specifically, the D&D one, I watched a podcast with Laura Ann Wall. No, wait.
Deborah Ann Wall.
Deborah Ann Wall,
Yeah.
and then Josh Borenthal, I think is his name. And she,
Oh yeah, yep.
the Punisher guy.
Yeah, yep.
She is such a master. It broke my head. She was like, "You want to play D&D?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right." So she gives a story. You know, you're walking through the woods. You pull your bow. You have your bow out, and you're trying to creep along. You hear a noise to your left. He's like, "What?" She goes, "You're playing D&D. What are you gonna do?" He's like, "Okay." You know, and she just like, she's like, "That's playing D&D. That's literally what it is."
It's demystifying.
So I'm gonna default to that video every time now.
And so in the music space, I guess I can't stress enough to folks, like, if you've ever listened to our podcast about painting, miniature war stuff, like, we're always like, oh, just go in and like talk to somebody.
Yep.
Or even like recently, I've also been trying to like learn some like coding and stuff.
Right.
And it's been very, it's always been this thing of like, it's so hard, it's so foreign. But when you start demystifying it and just realizing that, like, at the end of the day, if you just have the right setup, it's easy. And there's so many free tools out there for music.
Right.
There's so many free tools out there for D&D. There's free RPGs out there.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a long prelude, and it's something I really want to
make sure we know.
Preface that music is not prohibitive.
Right. That's not something I learned until later in life. I always thought, I gotta, if I really want to enjoy music and get into it, and even just sing in the shower, I have to be good. I have to do this. I'm like, no. You know what? When I had a kid, 20 years ago is when I figured it out. I mean, it seems like it's been a long time, but I guess I said 20 years ago is a long time. I'm just like, no. You just live life and have fun and sing. Like,
absolutely.
Doesn't matter if you're good at it. People around you, if they don't like it, they just turn their ears off. Like, they turn the channel. Like, literally, they can just move on.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I guess I'll give a little bit of a preface on my musical journey.
Well, I'd like to really just make sure that you're taking something so basic. Like, even when we were just starting this podcast, you're trying to open a can.
Oh, you're talking the sampling stuff.
Yeah, the sampling stuff is huge because, like you just said, you don't need to know music. That is a perfect example of it because that can is literally not music until you sample it, put it in the program, and all of a sudden you speed it up a little bit. All of a sudden, and all of a sudden now it's a beat. You know?
Or it's like
it's like, dang.
There's a YouTube video many years ago, and this is one of the first things that ever like convinced me like I should learn music.
Right.
And it was this guy's washing machine, and it was doing this like ticka 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 ticka, like just this crazy rhythm, and he's listening and he's like nodding his head a little bit, and he's like, "The devil went down to Georgia." He was, and I'm like, "Oh my god, that's amazing!"
Right.
Like my washing machine plays "Devil Went Down to Georgia,"
right?
And it's just hilarious.
Yeah, no, I love this, and I've been enjoying you're going through this. I know this is not your first time you've done any of this stuff for the most part, but it's the first time you've done it here on a regular basis. Like you've been kind of sharing it with all of us.
And I made a conscious decision a long time ago that like I played as a professional musician for a number of years.
Right.
And I kind of realized that like not everybody always wants to hear music.
Right.
And I took that as nobody ever wants to hear music.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, of course.
And so I was a closet musician it's weird. I went from a professional musician to a bedroom guitarist / closet musician because I'm just like, it's just a weird phase.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Like I went from literally playing in front of a lot of people all the time to just playing for myself.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a nice foundation, a nice middle ground there for you.
Yeah, and I think I'm slowly finding the happy medium now.
Yeah. You mentioned that, and I remember years ago when I had the thrift store, you tried to talk me into having a piano up front. And I regret it to this day not doing it, but for a different reason than what you'd imagine. It wasn't because I was afraid that someone was going to wreck the piano, or because pianos right now, honestly, are almost free.
Yeah, especially
get nice sounding pianos for almost nothing right now.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, you're not going to go and buy one of the grand pianos that on orchestra pianos.
They might just need a little work.
Right. But I'm like, I didn't want it because I just didn't want, and it's a selfish reason, absolutely. And now I wish I would have, but I just didn't want to have people playing on it all day. I was afraid that I would get stuck listening to that piano like 10 hours of the day when I was there.
Yeah.
Now, the odds of that happening were probably pretty slim. And I wish that I could go back and just have it out there so I could listen to that piano for a couple hours every day and hearing new musicians just try, or even somebody, I get caught on these YouTube videos where, the master piano from the New York Orchestra sits down in a mall somewhere in New Jersey, and all of a sudden he's playing like these incredibly hard, riffs on a piano that I don't even know if that's what they call them on piano, but and you're like, that is just beautiful. And he just sat down on this piano that's a mall piano, so that thing's been abused. And it's like, I wish I would have just done it. And so I understand where you're coming from. People you're like, they don't want to hear me at all.
It's kind of funny too because like there's a filter for. It's not just unique to me as a musician. Right. Like this is a thing that a lot of musicians and a lot of artists in any form of art, any medium.
Right.
You paint you paint miniatures.
Yep.
And you're like, well, no one, like, I'm painting miniatures. Like, no one would ever want this.
Right.
And you realize how many people appreciate your work, and you're like, oh, and it's like getting over that almost imposter syndrome kind of thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Been there, done that.
Yeah, but I mean, talk about a roller coaster of a topic, though, like, because it's music is such a ubiquitous thing. It means so much to so many people.
In different ways, too.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. That's kind of why I want to do this whole podcast. I just want it to be about like that. Like it's just important.
So I guess like what direction do you want to go? Do you want to talk about like how music is actually made? Do you want to talk about music and gaming? And as we talked about, we had the enhancements, or the role playing aids and peripheries and stuff.
Right.
We'll save the granular like how music is made, how I do music, whatever.
Right.
For later as a hobby.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about music in general.
Sure.
How many video games, like if I played a soundtrack from them, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm a kid playing that game. Like if you heard the Karnov soundtrack,
right? Yes.
You'd be like,
yes. Old games, yes.
Or Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
almost everyone.
The overworld theme.
I can't believe you brought up Karnov. That's amazing. I loved that game.
Yeah.
Most people hated that game. They just it wasn't even considered a great game.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that game. I probably played more hours of that than I did Super Mario.
Yeah. I mean, it's for me, I remember I had on the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, a Dave Miera Freestyle BMX. It was just one of those like skateboarder biking games.
Right.
And that's where my love of punk rock started.
Nice.
Because there was Green Day songs.
Right.
There was like a Sum 41 song on it.
Right.
And like a Basket Case by Green Day was on it. Like there was just all these punk songs. Taking Back Sunday.
Nice.
And yeah, so I was like, oh man, this is awesome. This is punk rock. I'm like, this is
what we're doing.
I'm part of the culture,
Right.
Like I love this.
That's pretty cool.
And I played a lot of punk rock and grunge when I first started music, and it was that game.
There was some influence.
The game was garbage. I hated the game. I didn't even play it. I play the game just to listen to the music.
You know what game got me on music?
What's that?
The first, obviously all the MIDI games and stuff back when you had console, you had to listen to music.
Mm-hmm.
On PC, I generally just turn the music off. Generally.
Yep.
Baldur's Gate's one of the rare exceptions because it got me right away. And it didn't interfere with my gameplay at all. But the game that got me, Burnout Paradise.
Oh, yeah.
I tell you what, sometimes I just play the game to listen to music. Honestly, it's just so well done.
It's so funny. I can get just absolutely... I could honestly be crucified for saying this.
Oh, no.
I don't like Guns N' Roses.
Right.
I don't. I actually just despise their music in general. But Burnout Paradise made me appreciate Guns N' Roses.
Right.
I'm like, Paradise City is just a banger.
It's almost like they made that song for that game.
Yeah, it's so
or the
good.
game for the song.
Yeah,
one of the two, but whichever way around.
But
it was so...
That's one of the best, it feels like home.
Yeah.
When you boot that game up and you see Paradise City You see that like graphic style in the cars. You hear that song. You're just like, yep, this is home.
I think the whole soundtrack is just so. There's very few songs in that soundtrack. There's a lot of songs in that game, by the way. It's not just 3 or 4. I think it might be 70, 75
Yeah,
games
they have like
that.
radio stations,
Yeah.
basically.
It's like, holy crap.
I was talking to someone the other day about like playing GTA.
Yep.
And like, this is old GTA, like 1 and 2. And they had the like weird advertisements and the weird stuff.
Yes, they
and
did.
like the sound design of the game was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And like it's something that's so small, and like it's such like a sound file can be like kilobits, like it could be tiny,
right?
But that sound effect could be so
could take the game from 0 to 100.
Yeah, it could anchor. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
You know, and that was one of the cool things. I guess I'll delve into this a little bit since we're talking video games. I use Ableton Live as my like software.
Yep.
And it has a bunch of different synthesizers and stuff like that you can do as instruments. As a proof of concept into practice, there's a NES dev site.
Okay.
It's basically like a NES wiki,
right?
But it has all the technical specifications of the NES game system.
Nice.
I went in and I found like all the like voices that it was capable of doing, and then like it actually like NES cartridges and and the NES console actually had an ability to play sound files.
Oh, yeah, that was built into the cartridge.
That was it was the cartridge. Yeah, basically it was the cartridge, but the game could play it.
Right.
Like the console could actually run it through the audio, but it was held in the cartridge.
Okay, that's cool.
But the size of the sound files was so prohibitive that a lot of times you didn't even. It was just not used.
Right.
One of the rare instances it was used was in the Ghostbusters game.
Oh, well.
There's actually like voiceovers in it, and that's why you very rarely hear any sort of voice in the NES games.
Right.
It was capable of it,
right?
But you very rarely heard
because
it
it was cost prohibitive. Like you had to make.
Whereas the SNES, the Super Nintendo, actually had better support for playing sound files.
Right. That's interesting.
And in fact, it was mostly based around playing samples.
I guess I never really thought of that before.
But like the technical side of it is pretty wild. So I made a NES emulator in Ableton using like the different analog and operator and some of the instruments that are in Ableton, the synthesizers essentially. And that's been really fun to play with. Like it's been super fun to play with.
I like that you're going down this story, and I actually can talk to you about it, and I can even hear some of the music because you come in here sometimes and you'll play some of the stuff you've been doing, or you upload it to Discord or whatever.
Yep.
And it's an enjoyable thing, it really is.
Yeah, I mean it's to me it's in the same vein as like your D&D player shows up with a miniature that they painted of their character, or someone's an artist and they draw someone else's character.
Yeah.
Like having that visceral connection.
Yeah.
And so it's really fun to experiment with this music and use, something that I've practiced for a long time.
Yeah.
To like add something to a game.
Well,
and that's the goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% sure you can answer this question. I know it. I know in my mind that it's real, but music is one of those things that it's one of the few things in the world, in this world that we live in, that will immediately tie an emotion and a subject for your memory to never forget. It's like the first time I was a child and I went and seen my, grandpa, and he brought me out to the dance hall, and the first time I heard polka, like I'll never forget that.
Yeah,
it's such a weird, like most people, polka. What's that even? Music people know what it is because it's such a like it's polka. Like everybody's heard of polka. But I mean, it's like I remember that first time we went to that dance hall, and the first time I seen my dad play in a band. Like even the song, I remember the song. It's like music is such a strong bonding thing.
Yeah, it's visceral. I think is a good word. Like it's so emotionally binding.
Right.
So I've actually read a little bit about this and gotten into it a little bit because music therapy is like a huge deal now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Especially like, I'm gonna go two-pronged on this.
Let's do it.
So another sense that's very powerful is olfactory, your sense of smell.
Yep.
If you smell fresh cut grass, or like if there's a smell that you remember as a kid, like, you know, like
Grandma's cooking.
Yeah. Like someone like macaroni noodles and potatoes and like a watered down tomato sauce and like poor man's spaghetti, you know, like stuff like that. Do you remember that?
Oh,
or like the smell of like potatoes in oil on a grill with carrots and like that is something powerful.
That's something when you pull up in the driveway, you're like, nah, I know what that is.
Or
Man,
like,
I just know.
For me, one of my like comfort smells is like grinding metal, which is weird. It's super weird, but like it always reminds me of my dad because he's always in the shop, and he was always like tinkering with some sort of angle grinder, grinding something down to weld it, or welding fumes is another one for me. But the non-sight, it's like it's stored in a part of your brain that isn't visual, right? And like it's such a powerful thing. Yeah. And so music, there's been a lot of studies done with it, and especially I have firsthand experience with it, with like dementia patients in the hospital.
Right.
There is nothing that will get a reaction or a like powerful emotion out of nursing home residents or elderly patients in the hospital. When I was very young and first learning guitar, I was probably 14 years old, 13, 14 years old. Like I had been playing guitar for like probably 6 months. One of the gentlemen at my church was terminally ill. Right. And I went into the hospital to visit him, and my mom said, you should bring your guitar. Right. Because he had played guitar for like 30 years. Oh, jeez. And I went in and I was just like talking with him and playing, and like I could just like when I walked in, you could just see he was like tired and stuff. And then he saw me pull out the guitar, and it was his eyes just lit up, and it's like it was That's insane. So cool. And I was pretty young, right? Like I was pretty impressionable at the time, and I'm like that literally. Oh yeah, no. Like that's crazy. And I, you know, even to this day, I still go and I play in like the nursing homes and stuff, right? Or like care centers or assisted livings, whatever. If there's a piano, I'll sit down and play it. And there's nothing quite like watching that reaction of playing a familiar tune, something very ubiquitous, like "You Are My Sunshine," or "Amazing Grace," or one of these like staple like Americana songs. Yeah, absolutely. It just evokes such a reaction, and it's like always like it might not be pure joy, right? But it's like recognition and emotion, especially in someone who might not be all there anymore. Have all their senses, have all their faculties properly. Basically. It is so crazy that like music can just bring them back to reality in a way. Yeah, even if it's just for that brief moment, you know. It's really cool. It's music's super powerful. Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, sound in general, like another one that always got me was like the sound of dice rolling. And you don't even think about it because we almost take it for granted. But like the sound of dice rolling is so visceral to people who play role-playing games. Oh yeah. Or board games, you know, like well, which is funny because you mentioned that, and lots of these like Roll20, maybe not Roll20, but I know like D&D Beyond and some of the other ones in Fantasy Grounds, they have dice sounds. Yes. So when you're rolling the dice, you just have that automatically connection. It's not so foreign to you then. Yeah, and sound is so important. Like it's honestly for most people, it's probably more than. If sight is 50% of all your intake, right? Sound is probably 33%. You know what I mean? Yeah, no, I would, smell is 10. You know, like it touches a little bit less, but like just in your daily use, it's probably not probably the most, but the next most. I think it varies from person. I've always said to myself and other people when we've had conversations, something to that effect, to this situations that. If I had to pick, like I had no choice, sight or sound, what would you pick? I would pick my sight to go
if I had
You know,
to.
like you have to lose one.
Yeah, because
I would rather be blind than deaf.
yeah, no,
100%.
yeah, me too. I like if everybody's like, well, why? You would be able to see nothing. Yeah, but I could still hear you.
Yeah.
That's important to me.
Yeah, and as
Like listening to music and listening to people, listening to things around me is way more important than me being able to see them.
Yep.
Because my imagination is pretty good. Like I can sit down and listen to a lot of stuff and come up with all kinds of crazy stuff in my head and just make a big old picture of what I'm watching. You know,
Yep.
I can do that if I can't, hear you.
Yeah.
So-
And music's so crazy. Like
Yeah.
there's so much to it, and not even just music, but sound.
Yeah.
And so I want to segue that now
Absolutely.
into this sampling thing.
Yep.
Sampling is something new to me. This is like me learning a new instrument, right?
Right.
Because I've never done sampling before.
There was I'm not trying to cut you off there. There's a movie though. I've been trying to ever since you started this like a few weeks back or whatever it was. I don't even remember how long ago.
Been a
it
few
was.
months now.
Okay, so a few months back, there's a movie that popped in my mind where a guy was doing essentially what you're doing, and the whole movie was based around this guy just taking samplings from people sneezing and coughing and clapping, and he was going along and he was doing all this stuff, and then he made like an album out of it.
Oh.
And I'm like, son of a, not it wasn't that simple, mind you.
Yeah.
It was a movie, so there was other plots to it. But
It was like a theme in the movie.
yeah, it was like one of the themes in the movie. And I'm like, gosh, I wish I could remember that so I could like just tell you about it, but I can't remember it.
So-
I've tried to search for it, and my brain won't.
So one of the cool things I did project-wise with the sampling, one of the first things I did was a buddy of mine streams. He's been on the podcast before, Blood Red Sakura.
Yeah.
We know him as Connor.
Connor
Yeah,
McGregor.
yeah. And he has a Twitch channel, and every October he does Spooktober. He streams like a bunch of times during the week, and he does all scary games.
Oh man.
And so I transcribed a version of Spooky Scary Skeletons that was like unique with
Right.
the like sounds that he wanted. You know, like I did like it was like a toy music box for like the jingle parts, and then
Right.
like the drums were just like trashy, like sounded like out of a freaking 1-inch speaker, like
Right.
just horrible, right? But it was what he wanted. And I edited the video for him. It was all these clips of like him and Twitch chat and all this
Right.
and that. And that's kind of like what you're talking about, where you
Yep.
could take and the idea of custom music
Right.
seems so unattainable, but when you think about sampling and taking something that is unique, like if I sampled your voice and put
Right.
it in a song, or if I sample somebody at the table going, actually,
Yeah.
and like I start a song with that, people can be like, oh, that's Gamer Joe.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah. Gamer Joe.
You know, and then
yeah.
now you get that like reference, and like, so this sampling is a powerful thing, and to be honest, it's pretty attainable.
Yeah, because it's
You could do it on your phone. I've been
and
doing it on my phone.
I'm gonna go on a limb here and say that you don't ever have to worry about copyright infringement on somebody else.
So the
Because
thing is, if you
You're
use your
recording
own
your
samples,
own sounds.
yep,
You're literally I can open this can 100 times. It may sound different 100 times.
Mhm.
So you can't. Somebody down the road can't say, "Well, I used that in my song." Pepsi, no, you didn't. Coke, no, you didn't.
yeah,
You know that I actually opened a Mellow Yellow can for that.
Yeah.
So
and it's very easy to create unique
yeah,
and original music
It's
via
crazy.
sampling. And it's funny because
Crazy.
in the musical world, sampling has always been kind of like a dirty word.
right,
But it's the idea of using other people's music as your samples.
right.
That's kind of a no-no in my
Yeah,
opinion.
well, yeah, you don't want to take somebody else's
Like
stuff.
I don't
want
to take your hard work and like
Right.
plus it's not even my thing at that point. It's
Right.
not unique to me.
Right,
Why would I want to do that?
right. No, I hear you on that one.
And yeah, so it's like, but I guess I'll just give a shout out. We're not sponsored by these guys. I'll
No.
preface by saying that, but I've been using a sampler called Koala Sampler.
Okay.
It's like $3 or $4 on the Android store, and I think it's for iOS too.
Right.
And it just uses a bunch of stuff on your phone, and it's very visual. It's very easy to lay out, and it's got sequencers and all these other fun things built in. It's insanely good for the price. Insanely good. I shout it out. It's great. That's how I've been learning how to do sampling.
That's pretty cool. I like it a lot. I personally love it. Like, I love it, and I actually love it because it's just like everything's unique. Then, and it's really hard to duplicate.
Yeah.
Like, you could make one and you could tell me what you did. I could go back and try and replicate that. It's not going to sound the
Yeah,
same,
it'd be
though.
different.
It's just
Yeah.
going to be different. So,
And the thing too is like I have a you know, like a kind of a music like formal training background and professional background more or less. But I've never done this before, and so it's really fun for me because I don't have to like play within the rules that I know.
right. Yeah.
It lets me play like abstractly and
Yeah, no,
creatively.
absolutely. You're. It's almost like learning something new.
Yeah,
Right?
and
It's like a whole new world in something that you're familiar with already.
exactly.
But it's like something that you never, it's just untapped.
It is like I could draw like a parallel to like learning a new painting technique.
Yeah.
Or learning a new style of
Yeah,
magic
like-
deck or something
Yeah.
like that. There's so many parallels. Learning a new board game.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, this is kind of a recurring theme on the podcast too of like trying new things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, you can always try new things even in hobbies that you're already doing. Like, approach it from a different way.
Yeah.
Like, a great example is you've gotten into resin printing now.
Yep. Yeah, which I was really, I started it and I hated it.
Yep.
I mean, it's still not my favorite way of printing, but I do like it much more now that it's much more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's I guess, yeah, no, we have the reoccurring theme is music and the way you're doing it. It's really, I really appreciate it. One, because you're sharing it with people in the store. Right?
Yeah, it's
Not everything you're doing.
No.
You're sharing samples with us, and you come in here and you talk about it. And if, in my opinion, that is so it's so important because when we're like, the whole reason I even run the game store is to literally give people an outlet to just not do the same thing they always do, like sit in their basement, sit in their bedroom, and you throwing that little bit in there, even if it has nothing to do with board games, nothing to do with this. It could get Gamer Joe to go, I want to try that.
Yeah. I mean,
And all of a sudden now Gamer Joe is like talking to his brother. Now his brother's like, well, that's cool. What do you guys do over there?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not, it's maybe a little selfish on my part because, you know, it gets people to come in and hang out and talk, but it's also gives these guys and these young people, guys and girls, just another outlet.
Yeah.
They didn't know they had before because you're like, no, this is easy. If I can do it, even though, you know.
And you know the beautiful thing about these like gaming communities too,
Yeah.
is like, let's use Gamer Joe as an example.
Yeah.
He had no clue I was a musician
Right.
at all, none
Right,
whatsoever.
right.
And he was like interested in it when I was talking to him
Right.
about it because it came up in passing and he's like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, no, I played for years. And he's
Yeah.
like, what?
Oh.
And so we were like talking about it and he was getting excited.
Right.
And then I could ask him about something that he knows very well, which was like we were talking about like neural networks and coding.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know anything about this, but this is really interesting. And it's like it's not even a selfish thing that you brought it up because
Right.
it's like sharing your interests and hobbies is kind of what this is all about.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
Like, no one would ever play Dungeons and Dragons unless that one guy was like, hey, you guys got some dice?
want to play Dungeons and Dragons.
You know?
Want to roll up a character.
And like,
Yeah, no, I hear you.
yeah, it's like, be proud of your hobbies, man.
Yeah, you know, it's funny you bring up Gamer Joe because he didn't know you played music. And then the first time we were talking to him about, you guys are building Warhammer and playing Warhammer 40K, whatever. And he started building these minis and he started painting them. And I mentioned, you know, Joe, we paint minis. We could do that for you. What? That's something you guys would do? Like, yeah, I can paint them. Javan paints them. My daughter paints them.
Yeah.
Really? So then he went and bought a bunch of paints. He started painting, and he's like, wow, that's a lot of work. But, you know, it's something he's just like, I want to try it. Like, he had no clue beforehand. I don't know if he just thought all this stuff showed up.
Yeah.
It's nice and pretty and assembled and painted on your table. Like,
Yeah, because he liked the lower 40K. He's like, I'll buy some models.
yeah. And all
And
of a
we're
sudden,
like,
it's
bro, like, we got lots of models.
so much more, man.
The realization on his face when I showed him shading and dry brushing,
Right.
as like just a
Just
simple,
the brain was like just roasting.
just a nitty gritty. Let's just get
Yeah.
paint on the model, get a table ready.
Yeah.
It was like just he was shook to his core. He's like, this
Yeah.
is way more. I'm not gonna say easier,
No.
but way more achievable than I ever thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you could show someone tangibly how simple something is, And that's what I want. That's kind of like, I guess we're coming full circle here.
Yep.
That's what I was trying to get at right away with the music thing.
Yep.
Is that it's as simple as, recording yourself stomping on a chair.
Right.
Or banging your fist. Like the best snare drum sound I have right now, like my favorite snare drum sound I've been using, is a recording of one of our gamers slapping the table, the gaming table.
Nice.
It's so good.
Works.
It's so good.
There
Like
you
it's
go.
just the tone, everything is just perfect.
That's nice.
And it's just a matter of like, okay, now on my app, I just put it on beats 2 and 4. You can think of it in numbers. You can think of it in shapes. Like there's so many different ways to mess with this stuff. Like there's no one solution.
No, and I imagine the more people we talk to about it, and the whole reason I wanted to do this podcast was just to get more information, more knowledge out there. And yeah, maybe there's other people that talk about it, but maybe it reaches only 2 people that haven't heard this before. That's 2 people that didn't have a new joy in their life.
And it's funny too, like, cause like being that like closeted musician up until basically like 2022 or something, like at the end of COVID,
right?
I didn't play publicly for probably 5 years, 4 or 5 years, maybe 6 years, long time.
Pretty much since before you moved.
Yeah.
I know before you moved, you used to bring your banjo or ukulele. I don't remember which one.
I brought a ton of different stuff.
You used to bring stuff in here once in a while and just sit there on the couch and just like,
just dabble.
Dude, what are you doing? I was just playing, man. All right, have fun. And then you got some of my other gamers bringing in their harmonicas, and all of a sudden I got harmonicas and banjos or whatever it is you have, and I'm like, holy crap, this could become the new downtown jam. Holy crap,
it's just fun, like and it's. Again, it's like kind of putting like the ego aside. It's like we're not there to show off. We're there to just have fun.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Like it's not about like you have to. That's the other thing too, is like there is this expectation that like if someone plays an instrument, you're supposed to listen to them.
Right.
No, like that. Like I don't care. Like I just want to play. Like if you listen to me, that's cool. Like whatever. But like I'm just gonna play.
Right.
And like also like if I bring out an instrument, I don't expect you to like. If you're like, hey, can you play this? I'll be like, I'll indulge you for a little while, but I'm like, at the end of the day, like, I'm just here to have fun. Like, I'm not here to cater to you, And like, that's part of the social contract too, of like the gamer etiquette of music,
right?
Like, if you will.
It's interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I appreciate it a lot that it's just going down this road, I don't know if I'd appreciate it if it was 24/7, but I do appreciate the amounts you've been dabbling in it and sharing with the people here in the store. And I know that if the people who are listening spend 10 minutes thinking about what you've talked about, they would probably appreciate it too.
Yeah, and like that's the thing too, is like we all things hobbies, right?
Yeah.
And it's like
absolutely.
It sucks that it took us 100 episodes to talk about this, but like it's one of those things like I take for granted that it's a hobby,
right?
Because it's like part of
your everyday.
It's
stuff,
part of my
right?
everyday thing. Yeah.
It would be weird if you didn't wake up and go, I'm gonna just dabble for a minute and I'm gonna move on.
Yeah, I mean, I've played a musical instrument every day, some sort of musical instrument every day for basically the past. God, probably 15 years of my life. Like it's
just normal for you. It's like getting dressed,
Yeah,
it's just normal. Yep.
But yeah, no, it's a fun topic, and it's something that, again, I feel like it's that demystifying. And then I guess the last thing I could add too is like, there's a great resource called YouTube and called the internet. You could. I swear to God, you could learn anything you want. Yeah. Anything. You can learn anything.
Yep.
On the internet now.
If there's one thing you can learn from anything that's ever told to you about the internet, the internet, there's anything, which is not necessarily good, but it's not bad. You just got to siphon through the garbage and know what you're looking for. If you want to learn how to play the piano, go to YouTube, go how to play piano, and find a video and an instructor on one of those million videos that are uploaded already, or maybe even 1 billion by now. I have no clue. Find an instructor that you understand how they're talking to you and learn from them. And it costs you nothing.
Yeah. And then I will say too, like, don't feel like you have to pay to learn.
No.
Because you don't.
No.
Like, learning is free. Knowledge at this point, knowledge is a free thing.
I hate to say this, and I know people are gonna scoff at me. There's very few reasons why you need to go to college unless you're going to be in a professional job that requires like cutting edge technology knowledge on something like a heart surgeon. You generally want to go and learn at a school where you don't want to learn that on YouTube. Yeah. But anything related to the hobbies that we're doing, there's no reason why you can't go to YouTube and just learn it.
Yep.
None. There's zero.
Yeah.
You know, I say the only reason to go to college these days are to learn things that, one, there's a ton of regulations on because you need to learn the regulations.
Yep.
And two, things that could cause life or death.
Yeah, like, or anything that's like
or monetary, like financial stuff would be probably good to learn.
There's also the idea of like a structured learning environment being good for certain disciplines.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like mathematics, like.
Yes.
That's definitely something where a structured regimen can help.
Right.
But again, it's not necessary. And one of the things you talked about with the internet, like good and bad, right? Yeah. The internet's just the tool.
Yeah.
How you use it is what ultimately determines if it's good or bad.
Yep. Yeah. But, if you can just, like when I do a search now, I can, it frustrates. I apologize to my wife if she hears this, but it frustrates the living crap out of her when I do a search on something and I just scroll quick, because I've learned that the internet is literally just a tool. And if the tool is not giving me what I want, I just go to the place where it gives me what I want.
Yeah.
I don't click on every link to see what every link leads to, because I know by the glance that it's probably just going to be a waste of my time. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, if you have a great website that would teach me everything I wanted to know and you put up an ad, then I just moved on. I didn't even I get ads, but I mean, like if in your title you're like, hey, blah 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 blah, yada yada, and you can learn about this, I probably moved on.
Yeah, or 5 secrets to becoming a guitar god.
No, you just sorry. I want to go to the guy who's going to teach
There's
you.
There's no secrets. It's just put your practice in. There is no shortcut.
Right. No.
For any hobby.
No.
For any skill that's worth anything, there is no shortcut.
No. There are no shortcuts. The only shortcut is just to get done and do it instead of just sitting there talking about it.
Yep. No, I 100% agree. God, we cover a lot on this topic.
Well, I mean,
we're all over the place, but it's kind of all encompassing at the same time. Like it all factors in.
Yeah. Well, it's all related to music, though. It's important. It honestly is important.
And again, music, like everything we've talked about here, with the exception of like the granular, like how to do this stuff,
right?
Or the like,
that's for different podcasts.
Specific stuff. You can replace music with painting, with Dungeons and Dragons role playing, with any sort of hobby. Fishing, you could replace it with fishing.
Well, yeah, fishing. I mean, anything. Yeah,
anything. Like, and it's just like, be proud of your hobbies and just like share them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm getting preachy, but like, man, that's like, it's so it's the benefit you and I have seen at the local game store over the years.
Yeah.
Of people just sharing what they're interested in.
Yeah, you can't replace that.
No,
you can't. And I've told people, I know you've heard this story a million times. If I was 20 years old and I would have walked into a game store and it had an environment that I could have appreciated, and if there even was one, I'd still be in that game store. The guy would be about 100 years old, but I'd still be there with the dude.
Yeah.
I'd be kind of like some of the young guys that have come in here when they were 18, 19 years old the first time they came in here. They're still here, coming back, even if they're just coming through town to visit.
Yep.
That's what I'd be doing, because it was just like, I just want to share stuff, and
Yeah, I mean, you find an environment, and it's finding an environment that you just, like, it just resonates with you. That's a good way of putting it.
So now, if we had an outro song.
Yeah, maybe we'll write an outro song.
There you go. See, maybe we'll just do it out of the noises that we get on the podcast, the coughs and the sneezes.
That's actually not a horrible idea.
The clanking and the fiddling in the background, the squeaking chair.
Oh my! So on that topic,
yep.
I'm gonna leave our viewers with a homework assignment. Bob Ross.
Yeah.
You know Bob Ross.
Who doesn't? Shame on you if you don't know who he is.
PBS spliced. I don't know who it was at PBS, but this is a brilliant idea. There's a Bob Ross song where they just took a bunch of his like phrases and stuff.
Oh,
and
yep.
auto-tuned it.
Yep.
It's called like Happy Little Trees.
Yep.
And it's like, you are the world, it is the creator.
It's absolutely genius.
And it's just the happiest, like most wholesome song. So go check it out. It's on YouTube. I know for a fact. I think it's on the PBS channel.
I think it was PBS because I think I looked it up, but I'm like, somebody just made a parody like of Bob Ross.
No,
it's actual like the company that showed all of his videos. So sweet.
Just go. I'm almost positive it's called Happy Little Clouds.
Yep.
Just go check it out, and it's just such a wholesome.
You know what
thing.
that was? That was some guy like you. That was like, or a gal, some person.
Yeah.
That was like, I'm gonna sample stuff, and they thought, Bob Ross.
Yeah, and then they just auto-tuned it, and it was
they just did it,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden it came out. It's great. Yeah, I've seen that one. That's great.
But yeah, that's all I got.
All right.
We've talked a lot.
All right. Until next time.
All right. Take care.